Hi, welcome to Sell the Story. I've got a question for e-com owners. What is your cookie strategy? You don't know? Then listen in. We have on today iconic brand marketer Ken Bracht. Now, Ken's worked at luxury brands like Audi and Land Rover. He knows a thing or two about building a brand. And today he shares with us his cookie strategy, which can enable you to take your brand and leverage it to turn failure into loyalty. All right, let's listen in. Hi, welcome to Sell the Story, a podcast for e-com business owners, giving them advice on how brand can impact and grow their business. I'm your host, Ben Watson, along with the co-host, Clint Armstrong. And today we have a very special guest, someone we've worked with and worked for, someone with a very strong background in luxury marketing and brand building. Ken, tell us what you're doing these days.
Yeah, good morning. So Ken Bracht, co-founder or founder of Beacon Advisory, but as Ben and I'm sure Clint will chime in as well at some point, worked on various luxury automotive brands. So started my career at BMW of North America, originally as a product manager and then in various marketing roles, including paid media, but was lucky enough to meet both of you when I moved over to Land Rover and launched multiple products, including the Range Rover Evoque, the Range Rover, Range Rover Sport. Then got the opportunity to move to a more senior position at Audi, where I was the director of brand marketing. Got to work on some Super Bowl stuff, which was fun. And then I've done a stint in nonprofit. And then before founding my own advisory, I was at Indeed. So I did some HR tech and some B2B as well.
Nice. And before we get into it, what's everyone drinking today? What coffee do we have, guys? Ken?
I'm a Starbucks dark roast kind of guy. Black.
You love the oil. Just get them
Uh,
out of a big can and tip it in.
a friend of mine who's Colombian at
Yeah.
BMW used to say, "Coffee is coffee." He drank it black as well.
Nice. Clint, what are you doing? Is this 1 day old, 2 day old? What are we
No.
doing?
In fact, I told you I found the Cometeer in the back of my freezer. So I'm drinking the last one today. So actually,
Nice.
Ben, quality coffee,
Isn't it?
today.
It is pretty good. It's a flash frozen espresso, Ken. But from some of the best roasters in the world. I mean, we should get them on to sponsor. I mean, seriously, it is good stuff, especially in a hurry.
I'm a 2 cups in the morning kind of guy, so that sounds up my alley.
I've got espresso, local roaster. They're delicious. They've got some really good beans going on right now. Paper Plane, if you're in the New Jersey area, check them out. Anyway, right. So, Ken, the ambition of this pod in our company is all about helping e-com businesses to grow their brand. Ideally to get to a space where they can really differentiate and they're creating brands that really stand out. And I'd love to hear from you. What's your number one piece of advice for e-com sellers, e-com owners who find themselves unsure what brand really is, or it feels like an afterthought sometimes for these guys?
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you are in your maturity, we'll just call it path to whatever your revenue targets are. I think a lot of e-commerce and young brands tend to focus on performance marketing, but it's never too early to start on brand building. And the reason I say that is that in many cases, performance marketing is demand capture. And what you want to be able to do is have a clear differentiating point, as you were saying just earlier, of what makes you different. So when you're at that point where you're talking to a prospective customer, that they choose your brand over the other because they understand what makes it better or different.
Yeah, nice. We actually had a guest recently, and we talked about the idea that conversion is actually more of a brand metric than it is a media function. Targeting and messaging can have an impact, but if you've talked about loyalty before when we've talked to you. It's if people don't feel they trust you, then they're not going to select you. Your conversion rate is going to be low.
Yeah, but before we go down that, there's one other thing I would want to bring up, and that is, what is a brand in the first place, especially to maybe somebody who might be more sales oriented or more operations oriented. And when I was at the nonprofit, I had to present a new brand platform. And to many of them who did not have a marketing background, I had to even justify why we were doing the exercise because they thought it was just the logo or colors or font or whatever. And when you get challenged in that way, you really take it down to the basics. And what I came up with during that pitch was, a brand is really almost like a person, and it's what they say about you when you're not in the room. So think about your favorite products, and if someone asked you about it, what you might say. And I think that can start from day one with a brand. And often a great differentiator is, well, why did you start or build this product or service in the first place? It's the origin story. And there's probably something in that origin story that gave that founder or that initial group of people that started that company the conviction, like, this makes sense and I want to make this happen. So if you think about it, most brands, and I'm happy to discuss some of the brands that I worked on, the origin story is a great place to start to build your brand.
The origin stories are great. And I think it allows somebody, an individual, a customer, whoever it is, to really emotionally connect with what is essentially an inanimate object. It's just like, I really love my car. It's like, okay, it's a little bit creepy, but at the same time, it's not necessarily the physical car. It's the enjoyment that you get from it. It's the history that's there. And would love for you to get into that piece, especially some of the brands that you've worked on. Obviously, Land Rover, BMW, Audi, all have incredible histories and all have just absolutely people who go bonkers about those brands. And they're very different. I mean, you can say, there are BMW guys, there are Land Rover guys, there are, people who own Audi. And it's just, they are very differentiated, but they love their brand for different reasons. So would love, if obviously you have much more insight into that, kind of working across all three, but would love to hear kind of more about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with BMW, which is where I started my career. The cars were known for being fun to drive as soon as the late 60s, even though the brand is over 100 years old. But the tagline, which is now famous, the ultimate driving machine, didn't come to fruition until the 70s with Ammirati and Purus here in the United States. But once that focused, kudos to Martin Purus and the creatives that came up with that line, it really distilled what the brand stood for. And then in the 80s, when there was, say, the rise of affluence, and people wanted a car that was maybe a little bit different from what their parents owned. So Lincoln and Cadillac were no longer aspirational for a lot of young executives. BMW was there. And it almost also created a justification, like, I really enjoy driving. I want my sports car and my sedan in the same vehicle. But to this day, that ultimate driving machine still differentiates BMW from other German competitors. Mm-hmm. So you think about Mercedes, you might think, oh, well, they were the first in automotive, or you think of them as engineering or luxury. And then Audi, you might think of tech. But once you establish what that clear differentiator is, even though you might still talk about design or performance or luxury, there's still one of those pillars that you're higher than your competitors are on. And Clint, you said this, like, you might have a BMW guy or Mercedes guy or, Land Rover, Range Rover guy or woman.
True.
100%. And a lot of people, let's take a step back. Like, this isn't transportation from point A to B. This is how it makes you feel when you're behind the wheel. Yep. And you're identifying, and in some cases, you're almost, wearing that car like a piece of clothing. Like, I always remember this when focus groups, I'm not sure automotive companies do focus groups anymore. I don't know. But whenever you do a focus group on a convertible, people would get in the convertible. They'd look at the interviewer and be like, how do I look? So like, they're literally wearing it like a pair of sunglasses. So, and then, other brands, like if we move to Land Rover, it's just has a deep heritage, going back to post-World War II of being known for being a capable vehicle. And then that led the brand to being seen as adventurous. In fact, there's a quote from Land Rover that many humans in the world in the last century, the first vehicle they ever saw was a Land Rover. So anyway, you carry that heritage and that adventurous spirit, even to the most luxurious products that Jaguar Land Rover offers today with the Range Rover and the Range Rover Sport. A lot of people think of the Range Rover of maybe the Queen's vehicle or the King's vehicle or head of state, or maybe it's the security behind. But, security's got an image to uphold as well.
Yeah.
But underneath that vehicle is still a very capable
Yeah.
drivetrain that still, has that DNA and that spirit from the Defender and the original Land Rover Series 1.
Yeah. And Ken, I mean, these are iconic brands, luxury, they've stood the test of time. For an e-com owner who's maybe, 6 months in or starting now, or even like 2 years in and they're like, oh, I need to build something, competitors are coming for me. How do you advise them to really, where do they start? It starts with the origin story you mentioned, with sometimes with the founder themselves, but how do they begin that trip in your mind?
Well, there's one thing I think that, and it ties back to what do people say when you're not in the room, reputation. So when I was working on Land Rover, I don't think it's going to be to any surprise to any listener on the call that sometimes Land Rovers and Range Rovers have a reputation for maybe spending a little too much time with the dealer. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But there were two things that the brand intentionally did. The first was you wanted people to love the design and love what the brand stood for and the experience in the dealership, so much so that if things did go wrong, that they forgave the brand for it, as long as they were treated well. The second thing, and so it's just a great product. So if you're in e-commerce, a lot of say, hey, it's almost like the economy stupid, for the original Clinton campaign, it's the product stupid, like focus on making your product great. And there's a lot of merit in that. Yeah. But the other thing that was the part of the second prong of that Land Rover approach was, how do you deal with things that go wrong? And when I was at Land Rover, I actually went and looked it up. We did this ethnography research with this company called Brand Trust out of Chicago. I'm not getting paid by them, but it's still some of the best research I ever came across. But think about it. I mean, ethnography research, you're following someone around in their daily life. It's expensive. And at the time, we did it for Range Rover and some key competitors. But as they were coming in to present the results, they wanted to level set us with a couple of the outputs. And one of them was what's called a peak end map. And the peak end map is like the squiggly lines of like what it's like as you have that customer ownership journey. And imagine how you're, super high when you've rolled off the dealer lot and you're showing that car to your significant other, or your family, your friends, and you're just way up here. Well, imagine that the first thing goes wrong and, you're down at the bottom of the mountain, the valley. And this is a place where every brand can differentiate themselves. And, I just described, what it could mean for a car owner. But as Brand Trust was setting us up for the outputs, they said, we want to give you an example so that you understand this. And so of all things, they talked about a client that was an electric company. And you're thinking to yourself, electricity, like there's nothing differentiating about electricity. It's either on and you just take it for granted. But think about when it's off, like suddenly it's a major inconvenience. Yeah. And so this electric company, what they would do when the power was out and maybe they were waiting for more equipment or a part to fix something, they would hand out cookies in the neighborhood. So imagine you get a knock on the door and say, hey, just wanted to check in. The power's out. We're fixing this transformer over here. Yeah. Should be about an hour, but here's this cookie. And it made a huge difference in terms of how people felt toward the electric company. And so at Land Rover, we called it, okay, well, what's going to be the cookie? So if something did go wrong, and just for the audience and for you guys on the podcast, if things really did go poorly, we might buy that couple or that owner a dinner. And find something that was unique to them, but the customer relations department had multiple things that they could choose from to try and turn a negative situation into a good situation, or at least a better situation.
Yeah, you're making sure they're heard. You're representing as a human, and I think we just got our title for the podcast too. E-com owners, what's your cookie?
Yeah,
it could be, but think about that. Every e-commerce brand is probably going to have some kind of delivery issue at some point. How can they make things better? And actually, I'll give you one. I ordered an accessory for my Weber grill. Right. And I don't know if you've seen like those. I'm an old school guy. I like charcoal. Yep. So I have one of those chimneys where you light it and you can put newspaper or fire starters in there and it just gets the fire going faster. Yeah. They sent me one. It was the wrong size. It was a jumbo size and I couldn't fit it in there. And they said, we'll send you a new one out. I'm like, what do you want me to do with the old one? Just keep it. Give it to a friend. And I thought, okay, this is a pain, but like now I have two. Um,
Maybe
anyway,
I'll get a bigger
I
grill.
think sometimes, that might actually cost an e-commerce, but maybe it made sense by the time you ship it back. It was relatively light. It didn't make
Yeah.
sense, but it made me happy as a customer, and I just told that story about Weber.
Well, yeah, you told the story and you might have repurchased something later on, and if you can look at those sort of repurchase rates, then you do that math on, lifetime value instead of just that immediate moment. And I think the best e-com sellers, that's what they do. They look at long lifetime value instead of what's immediately in front of them. But no, that's great advice. Yeah. And we've seen some examples where, Clint, we talked about this recently, an e-com seller sent out a note before the product arrived just to say, hey, it's coming out. And it was a note from the actual founder of the business.
Mhm.
Oh,
So
wow.
it carried a little bit of weight. And it started an engagement with that actual customer, before they even got the product. So it was a really nice way of pre-cookie almost, of that product. So no, it's a really great example. I love how practical that is too, as an example. So
Yeah, everybody can use that. I mean, on the flip side, I don't know if you all are Sonos owners, but it was a
Sorry.
wonderful product for years,
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
wireless that you could change your songs and put on playlists through your phone, and it would just play throughout your house. And I have speakers in my ceilings, and they decided to go through a major update and then not update the old app, and people had invested,
Oh,
in some cases, hundreds, if
wow.
not thousands, to have speakers in multiple rooms.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there was if you could Google it, there were people that were furious. Now they have finally addressed it, but it took them a long time to address it.
Yeah.
What,
More than like
what
it was a
known
year.
goal.
The
So you got to take care of your customers.
yeah. So that's actually
incredible.
a great example, because I think you said kind of your comment is, it's a brand is what people say when you're not there, which is 100% accurate. But I also think it's the ability to make a mistake as a brand or as a product and be forgiven by your consumers. Like, you have a little bit of leeway if you have that brand. If it's just a product, if it's just a piece of tech or whatever it is, and there's no brand wrapped around it, you don't have any leeway. Like, it's got to be perfect. But if you're a brand, then you have a little bit of leeway to make that mistake, make up for it, and then keep moving forward. And so I think it's, yes, what people say when you're not there. That Weber example is fantastic, like making sure that they're taken care of, but it's also the leeway that's there, that you gave them. And it's, you've got two of your charcoal chimneys that you can use, but at the same time, like, I know, and just in having these conversations, like, it's not the first time I've heard that story. And so I think that it's fantastic that it just keeps going. And I know that it'll be something that you tell all the time. So Weber now has, or whoever made the chimney now has, that leeway to make a mistake, and you're still going to buy whatever they put out next. And I think it's great. So
Yeah, I'll add. That was also during the pandemic, when a lot of us, weren't leaving the perimeter or whatever you want to call your property, and everything was on back order. So for them to have just said, "Hey, we'll just send you another one," it made me feel good, and I was spending a lot of time in the backyard.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, some e-com owners find themselves in a bit of a funny place after a year or two, where they had a product doing really well, competitors come after them, copycat, whatever, look at me type thing. And they find themselves needing to pivot. And quite often product is the brand for a lot of these guys. And that point of pivot can be, make or break for their business. And while you can bring out products that sell or don't sell, and that's a different story, but just that pivot on the brand can be really difficult. And you've been through a couple of big brands that did a tune up, and where do you think those, firstly, triggers are for needing a tune up? Where do you see it ahead of time? And secondly, what's your sort of advice for these e-com sellers as they go through such a big moment? And does it always need to be super expensive? Because that's the other thought, right? This is going to cost me 50 grand, 100 grand to do all of my brand kit and all my assets.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's a lot of different ways I can interpret that. The first thing I would say is try to get your hands on as much data as you can. Any decision there's going to probably be some data that you wish you had that you couldn't get, but do the research, and then do the competitive analysis and see, well, why am I losing share, or why am I losing revenue? What I will say though, and going back to why it's never too early to start with your brand, is it can make a difference to, quote, look the part. And what I mean by this is that, and I know you and I have, all three of us have had conversations about AI. I think AI is going to allow the little guy to look big. And what I mean by that is that, let's say you're in e-commerce and you have a couple of million and you're on your path to hit 5 million or 10 million or 20, or, you're really cooking when you're over 100 mil. A lot of startups aspire to be a unicorn, which for many years has been, okay, the market cap, so the number of stacks times whatever the stock is selling at or trading at, is $1 billion. I think every brand goes through an evolution. Even the most famous brands like a Coca-Cola, or even the brands we've talked about today, BMW, Land Rover, have all gone through these refreshes. And I think as you want to potentially create some distance between your brand that's established and these copycats, if you start to look like $1 billion unicorn, which is possible with a great website, good design with fonts and colors and logos and frankly, differentiated messaging that talks about what made you good in the first place. So, and then going back to AI again, I think you can make still or photography, you can make ads, and you can even make online video, especially if it's product centric. In my opinion, sometimes the human synthetic actors, depending on who's working on your business, sometimes it's not quite right. But products, you could build a suite of campaigns to make you look like $1 billion unicorn.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's really good advice.
It's just, the other thing I'll say is just like anything else, like whether you want to present yourself as successful, it might be the way that you're dressed. If you want to present in a room, it might be just displaying confidence. Again, going back to treat your brand like you're a person, and what do people say about the room, about you when you're not in the room. Keep building on that idea to create the typical assets you might have, but then think about how that even translates into social. And so I'll give you some insights from Land Rover. No surprise, British heritage. But internally, we talked about, hey, we really want to act like James Bond. And then internally, we had the big debate. Well, are we Sean Connery, James Bond? Or are we Daniel Craig, James Bond? And ultimately said, well, Daniel Craig's the more modern version, so we're going to be Daniel Craig. But think about that. Then like from watching years of Daniel Craig on screen, like what that voice should be when you're writing a sentence, when you're shooting something, when you're evaluating something. Like, well, when you look at a James Bond film, you're like, believe me, all the people who picked his wardrobe, like what kind of polo shirt does he wear? What kind of watch does he wear? And it just helps guide. I'm not saying as an e-commerce company you should pick Daniel Craig, but if you have something in mind, then you can bring your brand to life in multiple different channels.
Yeah, it's an archetype, isn't it? And we
love that.
Some of the work we do is around finding your ideal customer and your most passionate customer who buys from you, and what is the problem you're solving for them. And quite often, some of those knowing where to go starts with that conversation. How do they meet your brand? And what happens in the middle? So.
I know we're talking about a brand refresh when it's time to do that, but you just hit on something else that was foundational when I was pitching the nonprofit board, like, hey, this is why you need to invest in brand. And that is a brand archetype. So that was relatively easy to explain. Like, well, brand archetype is just, a clear persona, and it's used in storytelling all the time. And my favorite example is like, everybody's seen the first Star Wars. So, who's the villain? Oh, that's Darth Vader. Like, who's the rebel? Oh, that's Han Solo. And once you explain that a brand archetype can allow you to quickly determine what character is what in a story, that can also work for a brand where people don't have time and they only have seconds. So one of my favorite recent examples is think about how Duolingo goes to market. So here we're talking about learning a new language, and they've got like I want to say it was about a year and a half ago, Duolingo on Ice, like right around April Fool's Day. Like, it's so crazy. So they're obviously the jester. But
Right.
how about, how fun is that you're bringing some entertainment value and
Yeah.
just doing something ludicrous, but it does get your brand attention as long as you stay in that brand
Yeah.
voice. Then you can continue to do follow-ups and build attention for your brand just by being a gesture.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's fun.
So we have a brand survey that you have gone through, and thank you for doing that. And one of the questions that we ask these e-com owners, these brand owners, is, who are your competitors, and what sets them apart from you and from your product? And not a lot of, I would say, not a majority of the individuals who kind of go through that don't necessarily know what sets those other products apart from theirs. And I think that that's a key understanding, because it means that you're watching the marketplace, that you're looking at your competitors to understand, like, why is their product selling versus yours? And I think that as that erodes, you have a much better idea, kind of part of that data or comment that you made earlier. You have more data to say, okay, what do I need to do to refresh so that I regain what everybody or what all of my customers liked about me? And if there is that little chink in your armor that other product has taken advantage of, that needs to be closed. You need to build upon it, and your brand will help you do that. So I think that's it's something that Ben, I would say probably more than myself, has identified and kind of pushed forward, is that you need to understand who your competitors are, what their product benefits are that are above and beyond what you already have, and how do you solve for that? And I think probably the further away you get, the more of a brand refresh you potentially have to do in order to kind of solve for that chink in your armor. And it's always going to happen. So definitely, I'm glad that you brought that up just around kind of the need for it. So definitely something that we've thought a lot about.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, if you're first to market, you can build trust and potentially quality that, hey, you were first to market. If you weren't, maybe you're second or third to market, but maybe again, going back to the origin story, well, why did you decide to build a better mousetrap?
Yep.
So that could be an area potentially to differentiate yourself. But maybe we'll go back to Duolingo. I mean, the other thing is, if you add a brand archetype and a character to your brand, it can differentiate you, even though you're learning a language which has been around, I don't know, a couple thousand years.
Yeah, it's a bit like Rosetta Stone had the leadership for a long time, and they didn't take that leap to new technology and branding themselves in a fun way. But that's a good example.
We try and bring this all together. And originally it was, tell us about your most crazy / funny pitch story that you've gone through. Obviously you working on the brand side, us having more, I would say, years within the agency, you have a lot of really great pitch stories, but we've been talking with so many different people that I've had to adapt that. So it's less about what's your funny pitch story. And then it's kind of evolved into, what was your first job? And then what have you taken from your first job that you still use? So I'll give you the choice.
Job or post-college job?
You know what? I would say first job, because there's some of that when you're 15, 14, however, whatever it was, that you're just like, oh my gosh. So I'll give you the choice. The crazy pitch story, or what'd you learn in your first job that you still use today?
Oh, it sounds so basic. I've done some controversial campaigns, so I will stay away from the controversy, because there was a moment in time where if you had brand and you brand purpose, that you might do some advocacy for some things, but I wouldn't recommend that today, because the environment is so much more polarizing. But I went through some crazy pitches for sure. Usually the crazy pitches had to do with more with getting enough money to do it right. Which with the big brands that we work with, or I work with, were pretty deep into the seven figures.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? Maybe I can do a little bit of both. I'll tell you a fun one. I'll tell you a nice little, and it's also a post from when we worked with each other. But I'll tell a little fun stuff about a Super Bowl spot I worked on, since advertising agencies right now who are working on Super Bowl are in the thick of it. They are stressed. But it was for Audi. It was I had been in the room for a lot of Super Bowl planning for other brands, including Jaguar Land Rover. I got to watch the Jaguar team do their villain spot. I think it was in 2014, and I got to watch BMW do
It was
a couple
beautiful.
of spots in 2011. But I had never led one, and I was at Audi. I was only there 4 months, and we had to. We decided in Thanksgiving, very very late, on the concept, and so we were maxed out, single bid, approved the contract in December, and we're shooting in January. Now, mind you, we all know the Super Bowl is like in early February. I think it was around February 7th that year. Well, it was the name of the spot was Commander, and we had it was about this gentleman who went to the moon, came back, was kind of losing his mojo a little bit, and his son shows up in an Audi R8 that goes 200 plus miles an hour, and he kind of regains it. And that's basically the spot. But to give the spot some emotional punch, we wanted a great piece of music. Mm-hmm. And there were 2 pieces of music that were being considered, and it was David Bowie was our favorite, Starman. And we wrapped the shoot on a Sunday, and we knew we had something good, and we're like, clinking beers at the end of the night. And I go back to my hotel room, and David Bowie had passed away that night.
Oh my goodness.
So we were really hemming and hawing and kind of hand wringing because we knew we had a great spot. We knew the music was great, but we wanted to honor him. And so we ended up in this interesting situation. Because we didn't want to be seen as taking advantage of his passing, we put in honor of the Starman on the art card at the end.
Nice.
But his wife or his widow did not want it to be memorialized that way. So she said it can only be on the live broadcast, but it can't be on the YouTube or the one that's just distributed digitally. So here's my crazy request. Google requires that the same spot be the same.
Yeah.
So we had to go to Google and say, we really should be honoring the wishes of the widow. We'd like an exception.
Yeah.
And so I think playing that card that this was really about empathy for what she wanted ultimately did get relief from Google. So maybe Google's going to be all mad at me.
That's great.
Or the head of automotive. But that was one of the craziest things that we had to go through so that we could let America know that we were respecting, his passing, still have a great emotional spot, and then get past Google's rules in that case. But anyway, that ended up being top 10 that year. We're super proud of that. And then I'll just touch on my first job. I mowed lawns, believe it or not. So before I got a W2, I mowed lawns in the neighborhood, and that gave me some extra cash as like a 13, 14-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I think I got my first job when I could drive when I was 16. And of all things, I worked at the snack bar at Dulles Airport. But I would say,
wow.
I know, right? But at the time,
it's amazing.
Yeah, just walk in.
Celebrities weren't traveling private, and you would occasionally see football stars or actors getting a pretzel on their way to the gate. But I think the common thread, though, is that like no matter how smart and experienced you are, both mowing lawns and working at the snack bar just always taught me to have a strong work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, today people call it hustle. In some cases that can be distorted to unhealthy levels, but I've always been a head down, hardworking kind of person. And I think I probably got that from my parents, but it was from day one when, in terms of how I approach my work.
Love it.
You got to show up.
Those are great stories.
Hey,
yeah. No, go ahead, man.
Yeah, you landed the plane on Audi. Well done. That's awesome.
Love it.
Crazy one, right? Like,
yeah, that's a lot.
I almost revealed the person I had to talk to at Google, but I'll leave him off the podcast because
we'll see if we get a comment.
Stress, you get the shoot done and you think, wow, we finished. We're there, and then there's another challenge, and then another one.
The universe has something to say about that. Oh my goodness!
It reminds me of when we helped launch Evoke with the Guilt sale. So that was you pushed us to many levels to get to that point.
But that was going back to brand building for even e-commerce companies. Without context, the audience wouldn't know, but at the time we wanted to launch the Range Rover Evoque in an interesting way. This was 2011,
Right.
and like Rue La La and Gilt and all these
Yeah.
ability to buy high-end luxury products kind of in a flash sale was all the rage.
Yeah.
And that tactic, because you're borrowing equity from that cultural moment,
Yeah.
that could apply. You know, frankly,
Yeah.
I did this. I was a big group who worked on the idea, but Audi stole something out of that same playbook. They did a big partnership with Airbnb when it was just starting to get into the cultural zeitgeist. But big fan of partnerships when it's appropriate. And now you see a lot of collabs from different brands.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work though to do it right, you know. So yeah, I think we got that one right. It helped. Ken, thanks for coming on. Love talking to you. Very easy sort of flow. I think some really great advice for e-com owners out there. And give us your sign off, business name, remind everyone, you know, how they can get in touch with you. We'll put your socials in the details under the video. And mate, thanks a lot. I'll hand it over.
So Ken Bracht, Beacon Advisory. I can be found on LinkedIn. Shoot me an email. One of the nice things about founding your own practice is that the first part of the email is just your first name. So it's Ken at BKN or beaconadvisory.com. And I've enjoyed it. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Clint.
Yeah, no. Thanks again.
Really
Clint.
appreciate
Always
it.
a pleasure, mate.
Yep.
All right. See you guys.
Cheers.
Bye.